Alrighty, and we are live. Welcoming to the show today, Mixology CEO and host of the Business Jiu Jitsu Podcast, Jordan Edwards. Thank you for coming on, my friend.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Great to be here, Jeremiah.
Thank you. It's a huge honor. I stumbled upon your podcast on Instagram and was instantly like, yes, this is great. And to be honest, like the little quotes you put up, the little quote captures from your show, from your various guests, I'm a huge fan of, and post almost every one of them to my stories because they just ring so true for me. And I know a lot of people that follow me on Instagram can identify as well. So thank you for.
Thank you for being an engaged part of this project in the book and this whole podcast that I started. And the concept of business jiu-jitsu is because I'm writing this book. And when I started writing it, I said, I want people to be part of the journey. I want them to be involved. I want to hear from them. And so that's why I started it. So it's great to see you reposting the content. And I'm so grateful to you and everybody else who's gotten right behind it. And so many people that were my heroes, it meant a lot to them too. And they wanted to talk about it. So it's been an awesome
that's fantastic. Journey. Yes, we'll get to all of that. I didn't know about the book until today, actually. And I was like, wait, there's a book. So I definitely want to learn more about that. To start, I wanted to ask you, what came first for you, business or jiu-jitsu?
Well, business, I grew up in a house of entrepreneurs and a family of entrepreneurs. So I've been in and around business since I'm born, really. But I was expected to have a job as soon as I could begin working, whether it was in my family business or not. And I've had dozens of jobs as a kid growing up, the most lucrative of which was caddying. I was a caddy out here in Long Island in New York, and just made way. They should not be paying kids that much money. I don't think now that there's NFTs and all this crazy internet world, these kids are making a lot more money, I'm sure. But so I was always expected to work, and jiu-jitsu didn't come until after college. I'd been an athlete my whole life. I was a college athlete. I played lacrosse club at Northeastern University for 2 years, and then I retired, and I skied competitively. I was a ski racer all through high school and college, and a couple life-threatening crashes in ski racing, and I retired from that too. And I was miserable and depressed and getting out of a long-term relationship, and then jiu-jitsu.
So you were still pretty young when you started jiu-jitsu.
I was 24.
Yeah.
I'm going to be 37 in a few weeks. So
I was older than you now when I started jiu-jitsu. I was 38 when I took my first class, and I'll be turning 45 in a few days.
Oh wow! Well, and you look great.
Hey, boy, how was that jiu-jitsu?
Oh yeah,
it's all the acai.
I was down in Alabama last week for business, and meeting with this guy. Happened to be with my dad. He was on the business trip with me. He doesn't always come, but he wanted to come on this one. And we're meeting with this dude. And he must be my dad's age. He looked like my dad, contemporary, gray hair, chubby. Says he's 42. So 42? You're 7 years older than me? What? And it was just this moment of, whoa.
Got to sign that guy up. Find him a school close by because, shouldn't be that way. Myself, I was always athletic as well. I was a competitive distance runner as a kid. Oh, that was the only thing I did competitively. I mean, I played, sports like, in school, played football and baseball and basketball. My dad was, still is just a nut. He was an Ironman, ran triathlons and marathons. And now he's a power lifter because he blew all the connective tissue out of his knees. Didn't even do jujitsu, and dude's got no connective tissue. I'm like, man, you should be a heel hook specialist with the lack of tendon in your knees. But now he's a 70-year-old bodybuilder. It's insane. So it was always, my brother and I was always pushed on us.
Where are you from?
Originally from Nashville.
Oh, cool.
And moved around a lot. Left Nashville when I was about 10 years old, lived in Virginia for a while, and Norfolk and Virginia Beach, lived in Rochester, went to school in Buffalo, and moved to New York almost 20 years ago.
Oh, wow. And you're in the restaurant business, right?
Yes. So I did that just growing up. Same thing, neither of my parents, they just had, day jobs, worked for companies, but my grandfathers were hustlers and entrepreneurs. So I was exposed to it early on, especially my mom's dad. We moved to Virginia where he was at, and I spent a lot of time with him as an early teen, and he had me going on all his hustles and stuff with him. It was great.
Nice.
And I got into the restaurant, busting tables and washing dishes when I was 14. And in management by the time I was 17, I guess. I dropped out of high school because I was running a restaurant, basically. Cool. And yeah, just in all the moves and everything, it was just the first job I got. Anytime I moved to a new city, go get a restaurant gig, usually get cash money that night and free food and often beverage as well. Yeah. And maybe other party favors. It was a good time. And yeah, after, when I first moved to New York, it was the same thing, just restaurant hustling. I actually, after dropping out of 2 high schools, I managed to squeak out a master's degree in music.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Very nice.
Meandering journey. And to supplement, you work in a lot of restaurants because gigs they're not consistent. Yeah. And when I moved to New York, I was doing both. I was cooking and I was playing, and the restaurant scene it's too good here, And
have you ever come across a friend of my podcast, Nur Khan?
Can't say I have.
Nur, his current bar, he's a legend in New York nightlife, but he's Rose Bar, Electric Room, but now he has the Butterfly Lounge.
Okay, I know Rose Bar.
Yeah. He's a jiu-jitsu brown belt at Mushin.
Okay.
And a great guy, but he's, I figured you guys must have crossed paths at some point. He's a rocker dude, friends with his Instagram is full of Courtney Love and every rock band. They're all coming through his places all the time.
No, I'm still a commoner. They haven't rose to those, or maybe I peaked out already. Maybe it's not in the cards, but no, I'm not familiar with them. But it's a huge scene here. That's what I was kind of saying. It's it's too good. You couldn't. And I kind of didn't intend to open a restaurant, but my current business partners who I was working for at the time just looked at me one day and said, "We're going to open a restaurant." And I was like, "Oh, cool. You guys are?" And they were like, "No, we are." And I was like, "All right." So, it was an opportunity I couldn't turn down. But I'm in a lot of things as yourself. I'd like to hear more about, because I'm fascinated by the fashion industry. It's something
Sure.
I feel inside I want to do, but I know nothing about it. And my friends that are in it are like, "Don't do it." And I'm the same with if someone's like, "Oh, I want to open a restaurant." I'm like, "No, you don't. You really don't." So you're the CEO of Mixology, correct?
Yes.
And is that, I was poking around on the sites and everything. Is it online only? Are you just an online retailer? Or do you got brick and mortar locations as well?
We have 12 brick and mortar locations. Okay. 3 more in the wheelhouse right now that I'm working on at different stages. One's under construction, one's at the lease phase, and one is in the LOI phase. So, and LOI means letter of intent for your listeners. So, by the end of this year, I would have opened 3, very likely. Fingers crossed, anything could happen. As my dad would say, it's not a deal unless you get kicked in the nuts 3 times at least. So, and I've had dozens, if not hundreds, of deals fall apart on me at every stage, from right at the beginning to you're about to close and it falls apart at the very end. So, God willing, I'll open 3 more stores this year. That'll bring me to 15. And yeah, I love the fashion business. I'm a big believer in entrepreneurship. So, but it's less about, what it is and more about just the act of creating business and starting businesses. And I'm very lucky to be involved in a lot of different businesses and a lot of different industries. And my 2 main gigs are real estate and fashion. And they actually kind of go very well together, because as a landlord, and I own, office buildings and shopping centers and apartment buildings, I'm writing leases. And then on the fashion side, I'm a tenant.
Mm.
And so a big part of what I do is opening up stores, building out stores, hiring teams, working with groups of people. And my sister is very much the fashion part of the business. So she does all of the buying. And even though I've been in the business, this is our 13th year, I know so little about women's clothes. It's scary.
It makes sense. I mean,
I still can't figure it out.
it makes me feel a little better about you.
Yeah. I just, you know what? It's so funny. Like
if you said the opposite, I would be concerned.
I just don't know. I like something, right? I'm like, this is going to sell great. The Biggest Loser. And then other things that I think are awful. I'm like, who would buy that? We sell thousands of them. And so it just goes to show you that, you really need to know and be passionate about that aspect of the business. And then it doesn't mean you can't be in business. You just need to find people who are really good at the other part. And so that's why my sister and I, we go really well together. But you should see every day, Monday through Saturday, 6 days a week, I lead a company-wide Zoom call. So we can have anywhere between 60 and 150 people on the call at one time. We have 300 people total in the company, but usually not everybody's on. We have about 80% of that's retail workers. And I'm talking to them about jiu-jitsu. I'm talking to them about business philosophy. I'm talking to them about self-defense and investing. And these, the average woman, like if you regress to the mean, they love fashion. They're not interested in those things really, but they've become a little bit interested, which is nice.
Well, and by doing that, you plant the seeds for potential like middle management, potential partners down the road. Like,
oh yeah,
those are the things that you're right. Most of them are just like whatever, but one or two will be like, I like where this is going.
Yeah.
You said so many things that already that just have like got my wheels turning about the connections between, business and jiu-jitsu. And to comment on that, like I said, I started at 38, and that was 2015, and I opened 4 brick and mortar locations that year. Wow. I opened a coffee shop, a beer store, an organic market, and the restaurant, which I'm sitting in now. And that was the year that the school that I first attended opened up just a few doors down from the restaurant. And the guy was like, you should come in, you should train. You'd see me working out like in the park and stuff like that. And I was like, cool, I'll give it a try. Had no idea it was going to take over my life, like totally hijack my life, And I heard, I would listen to like Simon Sinek and Gary Vaynerchuk and Tony Robbins and people like that. And I would hear them say certain things like added value or leverage. And I didn't really understand it. I was like, those are cool words. What do they mean? Like, I'm a high school dropout, man. I'm not that bright. And I've been training maybe for like 6 months to a year. And he starts, the instructor was really deep, really intellectual, and he would talk about all those things in terms of jiu-jitsu. And that's when the bell kind of rung for me, because I'm like, I'm here training, I'm learning self-defense, I'm getting fit, like being healthier and all this stuff. But he's also saying these things that are impacting the rest of my life, my professional life, my relationships and everything. And I was like, that's what added value is. It doesn't have to be something like, oh, I'm going to offer you a discount or, free dessert, that like, when you're in the service industry, it's very easy to fall into that trap. Like, oh, added value is this free thing that I give you, this tangible item that we already offer. It's kind of like narrow-minded, I feel like. And that's what I used to do, like repeatedly. I did it tons. And then when I started to understand like what he was doing, what the school was doing, and their way of added value, it gave me some insights into how I could utilize, my own charm, personality, for added value at the restaurant. And not for nothing, it worked. And it's what survived us through COVID, through all these, this hard time. It was really just about like intimacy and the things that like my wife and my kids, even because they're at the restaurant all the time, brought to the table. And then I didn't have to give product away anymore. It didn't have to be this thing that like hurt the bottom line. And then of course, leverage. Jiu-jitsu is all about leverage. And I just remember coming in one day and I would just listen to this Tony Robbins thing. And I just said to the instructor's wife, who was also a black belt, I was like, man, she was really into Tony Robbins, even did one of his seminars. And I was like, what does leverage mean? And she was like, okay, when you're doing an arm bar. And at this point I was like, I might have even been a purple belt, I'm like, what is leverage? And she's just like, oh, this kid. but it helped me understand those things a little more. Did you have kind of a similar experience, or were these things already kind of common for you? You just understood them already as you started your jiu-jitsu journey, or did training like deepen your understanding of some of these business concepts?
Yeah, no, training, my daily practice of training has evolved all of my thinking, so far beyond. And every author you mentioned, I've read extensively. And I think that reading to business is what training in jiu-jitsu is to jiu-jitsu. Like, you have to just constantly be reading and learning. And the reason why is because you just don't have the answers unless you're just one of these one in a billion Elon Musk types. And trust me, those guys are reading too. But as far as the conceptual aspect of jiu-jitsu, when I was in my late 20s building my businesses, and I would be working on some business issue that I would be struggling with, or personal issue for that matter, I would go to jiu-jitsu and I would warm up. I would be instructed a technique step by step. We would train that technique in Rendori. I would try to do it in live training. And then after live training, we'd sit down with my sensei, Nardu Debra, who's a black belt under Henzo and John Danaher.
Nice.
And he would unpack everything we just learned for us through the lens of history, philosophy, strategy. And he would be talking about Henzo. He'd be talking about professional fighters. He'd be talking about Sun Tzu. And I would magically unwind something that I had been doing that day in business, because he would be talking, like you're saying, about the art of leverage. And he would be trying to say, you don't do an arm bar by stretching it on your stomach. You have to put your hips up into it so that it becomes available to do it. And it would instantly trigger something in my mind in business. Like, wait a second, I'm fighting this person over here. I need to make them my ally because I need them to do something that I want. And so I would instantly start to connect these dots. When I say instantly, I mean over the course of 10 years or more. But hearing these stories day in and day out, after having trained under Sensei Nardu for now 13 years, so many of his stories, I can tell those stories. And I do oftentimes, it's my own teams. But every time I go back and I learn the same basic armbar, or hear the same story again for the 10th time, the 14th time, the 20th time, I'm getting something new out of it. I'm learning some detail that I missed or overlooked. And this is going to be one of the stories that I tell in my book. And it's that he might have taught me that a decade ago, but I wasn't good enough. I didn't have enough knowledge, skills, and expertise to be able to put it into action the way that I wanted. And so, yeah, as it relates to leverage, leverage is something that's really critical in jiu-jitsu. And one of the things that I like to share with my employees about leverage, and I kind of touched on it before, is when you are leading a large group of people, you can't be on top of every detail. You need to empower people to make decisions. And so one of the mottos we have at my portfolio of companies is, you don't need my permission to make a good decision. It's like, I don't want you to call me about something that it's a plumber, an electrician, a handyman, a garbage man. Just call them, make the decision. And if I don't agree with you, I'm not going to get mad at you. But after the fact, we'll discuss it. And I'll say, this is how I would do it next time. And so what that's done at my company is I've empowered hundreds of people to make decisions and just do things so that not every single decision flows back up to me. That's leverage. That's the leverage of your whole entire team of people being able, free thinking to make decisions. In a lot of small businesses, family businesses, single stores, small offices, the leader has to make every decision. They want to micromanage everything that everybody does. And I did that when I started running my businesses. I'll give you a funny story if you'll give me a second.
Yeah, go for it.
So when Mixology started to take off, I had an office over here in Rockville Center for my real estate business. It was a beautiful small office with a small administrative team for all of our real estate assets. And Mixology was being run out of the back of one of the stores. And it was very clear that it needed an office and that I needed to be there on a daily basis to oversee this young team. And so I had some space in one of my buildings, and I built this very nice office, mediocre, didn't have any windows, but it had enough space for the whole team. I went there the first night, and I put flowers on everybody's desks. I pushed everybody's chairs in and I said, tomorrow they're all going to walk in. And what do you think happened after the first day? 6 o'clock goes, I walk out of my office. The place is like a bomb went off. I was like, don't they see that I left it so beautiful for them? I don't understand why they're destroying this place. So what did I do? I cleaned up everybody's mess. I pushed in every chair. I put the papers neatly together. I threw away the food. I took out the garbage. I said to myself, when they walk in tomorrow, they're going to see that I cleaned it up for them. And they're going to know, oh, hey, I need to do this. Well, what do we think happened? They came in the next day, bomb, the whole place went off. And so I went crazy. I yelled at them. I said, what are you guys doing? Don't you know you can't leave a place like this? It's disgusting. And what do you think happened? The next day I had women in my office in tears. No one's ever talked to me like that. I don't know if I can work here. And I said a phrase that I have said to myself over the years. You are the asshole, not them. The people who find a lot of success in leverage understand when they're doing something wrong versus when the world is out to get them. I stopped doing that. I stopped picking up after people and I stopped yelling at them. And I said, you know what? I'm just going to, and my wife, honestly, this happened. I didn't meet my wife until a few years later, but she really solidified it for me. And this is a Tony Robbins thing. Catch people doing things right instead of catch people doing things wrong. Lead by example, show them the way, explain the way that you want it done, and see if they fall into place on these things. It takes a lot longer. You want it done like this. That's the way I would do it. My desk would be neat. I take out the garbage. I sweep up the mats. I do jujitsu every night. But the average employee didn't. And so when I had this realization, it allowed me to start the process of being able to grow very large teams. And one of the things I hear constantly from people who are starting companies, they have one restaurant, they want to have two restaurants. They opened a second restaurant, they're not there all the time. Things are being done half as productively. Mm-hmm. And so these are the stories that I tell them. And jiu-jitsu has informed all of this for me. Like it has made it all more clear, more explicit. So yeah, so that's my little wrap on leverage.
Yeah. One of my mentors, guy that I worked for when I was a teenager, and he's now franchised. He's got restaurants all over the place. He constantly asks, he's like a motivational speaker now, and he's working on a book and everything as well. He always asks, how do you give 1,000%? And it's through delegation, because you can give your 100.
That's right.
But after that, you're done. You're gonna peter out. You're gonna tap out. But empowering, like you said, your staff and your close circle, and doing it through like good communication, proper communication, and then you really get to see that lever, like you're at the slot machine, and you hit the triple cherry, boom, and out it comes. Man, you said something that really got me going, and it slipped away. Fog brain on that one. One other question I wanted to ask you. You're a busy guy. You got all these things going on. Why did you start a podcast? Was like you're just like, I'm going to start a podcast. Was there a reason for it? Were you just having fun?
When I decided that I wanted to, I wrote another book before this with my dad, and I co-wrote it together called This Is It. And it chronicled my first 10 years in business. And the moment I was done with that book, I said, I knew already what I wanted to write my next book about. And the process of writing a book takes a very long time. If you do it well, it could take years. In my case, I've already been at it for 2 years. I had about a 6-month delay with COVID. And so the book will be out sometime around early 2023. And I said, I want to talk to all of my heroes. I want to talk to Gordon Ryan. I want to talk to John Danaher. I want to talk to Jimmy Pedro. I want to talk to these people. They should be my friends. Why? That was how I felt. I was like,
I get it.
Right? Like, if they have and in my business world, I'm not afraid to pick up the phone and call and get what I want. Mm-hmm. And I had never, my jiu-jitsu life was my Bruce Wayne, was my Batman.
Yeah.
I had a life, I had friends, I have family, and they didn't understand what I do in jiu-jitsu. And there was no crossover. I didn't talk about jiu-jitsu at work to my employees. I didn't talk about jiu-jitsu to my friends because I'm tired of hearing about it. In years of doing it, I was never able to get even a single person to come train with me, which was strange. I thought was strange. I thought, oh, maybe some friend would want to come train with me. Almost happened a few times. My cousin who wrestled in college came once. And it got to the point where I said, I need to bring all the things that I'm passionate about in my life together. And this was in December of 2019. Now, in the past parts of my life leading up into that point, if I wanted to do something, I would think about it. I would write notes about it. I would, start planning it. But I had gotten to a point in my life where I had said, anything I want to do, I'm just going to do right now. And that was how the podcast happened. I came up with the idea for Business Jiu Jitsu on the heels of that book. I said I want to talk to all these people, and I loved podcasts, and I was like, oh, I'll start a podcast. But I didn't know anything about podcasts. I didn't know anything about equipment. I didn't know anything about the streaming service we're on or how to do it. And I said, fuck it. I'm gonna go find a podcast studio, and I'm gonna go there, and I'll see what happens. I didn't have a guest, and I went and I did a podcast by myself. I never published it. I just did it because I was like, I'm going to do it.
Ballsy though. It's not easy.
Yeah. And I wrote down a list of all the people I wanted to talk to. It's like 15, 20 people long. And by the end of 2020, I had spoken to 90% of those people. And then by the end of 2021, I'd spoken to essentially all of those people except a few of the celebrities. Like I haven't gotten Jonah Hill. I've been trying because he's a jiu-jitsu guy. I haven't gotten Ashton Kutcher, and I've tried. And like one or two other people, but outside of that,
you got to have Keanu Reeves in there too.
Keanu Reeves is another one. He wasn't on my original list, honestly. Yeah. But Jonah Hill and Ashton Kutcher, Ashton Kutcher, and then this other guy, David Mamet, who's a playwright. Do you know who David Mamet is?
I don't.
He's a jiu-jitsu black belt. He wrote like Glengarry Glen Ross.
Oh, okay.
He wrote the show The Unit. Coffee's for Closers. He wrote those words.
Nice.
So, but outside of that, I just spoke to basically every single person I wanted to. And it was just, I didn't have any connections. I didn't know any of these people. I didn't have any I just said, I'm going to do this thing. And then I just did it, and people want to know, like, what's the secret? How did you do it? How did you get their number? Well, I just did it. There's no secret. I decided I wanted to do it, and I did it. And not every single person got back to me right away. Not every person said yes right away. Some people were elusive or hard to get. Sometimes I call people. I said, hey, can I have their number? No, they don't want to talk to you. I can't give their number out. And I've had to say that to some people too. Some people call me all the time. They know John Danaher was on my podcast. They're like, hey, can I have John Danaher's cell phone number? I'm like, dude, no, sorry. Go find it. Like, you have to go materialize.
That was the only reason I asked you to come on the show.
I don't know how, and I don't like saying no to people, but
it's a superpower though.
Right?
Yeah.
And so, but the point being is, as far as the podcast goes, it's been like one of the most enjoyable. I love this format. I think this is an amazing medium for growing your business. And I can't tell you how much business has begun to materialize off of this now that I've brought all of my passions together, business, jiu-jitsu, my personal life. And that was a big mistake that I made early on, was trying to live separate lives and compartmentalize my passion. And I don't know that I was embarrassed by it. It's just that I felt like people were tired. My people in my life were tired of hearing about it. Like they couldn't relate to it in any way. And so all my friends essentially in jiu-jitsu were my teammates. And then I also travel a lot for work because my properties are all over the country. So everywhere I'd go, I'd always get my gear.
Yeah.
And I said, I want to be a part of this jiu-jitsu world. I'm never going to be a world-class competitor. I'm never going to be a world-class teacher, but I do think that I am world-class in business, and jiu-jitsu's helped my business. I bet there's other people out there like me. Actually, I think there's probably a lot more people like me than there are like the top competitors. Yeah. And it's like, I want to meet those people. So that was the story.
That's great. You reminded me what I was gonna say. So yeah. I didn't realize you had Travis Stevens on your show until yesterday. But he was supposed to come on yesterday, but something came up and he had to postpone. But he just did a seminar at Gregor Gracie's new school. Have you seen Gregor's new school
I
in
saw
Brooklyn?
it on Instagram.
Oh.
I'm dying
So
to
it's
go.
like, I mean, I'm like 10 minutes from it right now, and I go there from time to time. But I definitely went to that Travis Stevens seminar. It was the day of that big snowstorm, so like only 20 people came. We got this huge school, this huge, beautiful school. There's like 20 of us in Travis, you know, and like his wife and daughter were over in the corner, and my wife was over there with them, and like we were just hanging out and talking. And he was talking about judo and execution and success. And I'm like, he's talking about business. Like, it just was so clear to me. And so afterwards, I just said to him, like, you were talking about scale. You were talking about replicating, you know, your favorite grips successfully. But what you were really talking about was like scaling a business. And he was like, you're right. And I was like, are you in business? I didn't know, you know, much about his life outside of martial arts. And we got to talking, and I was just like, same thing. I was just like, would you be interested in talking about this on a show? And he was like, yeah, sure. So it's kind of amazing. And it was the same for me. Like, I want to talk to these people. Now, fortunately for me, so the school I started at closed during COVID, unfortunately. And he's a Danaher black belt as well, Stuart Carroll. Mm-hmm. And I also asked Henzo to come on the show like 2 years ago, maybe. It was on Twitter, and I was just like, fuck it. Let's just like, somebody was like, you know, who are the top 3 people? If you could have anybody like come on your show, who would it be? And I just looked up, like, you know, some of my heroes in music, martial arts, and cooking that had Twitter accounts, and Henzo was the first one I looked up, and I was like, dude, he's on here. And I didn't know how active he was. I didn't know he was like a lunatic on Twitter. He's about to get his ass banned. But I just, like, you know, I tagged him, David Chung from Mamafuku, and Mike Patton from Mr. Bungle and Faith No More, just, you know, for fun. I was like, these are like 3 of my heroes. And Henzo was the only one that like responded back, and he was like, absolutely, champ, you let me know. And I was like, holy shit. And then like we started talking, and I was like, I'm actually one of Stuart Carroll's you know, students, and the relationship was born. And a little more than a year ago, when like everything was hardcore shut down, we were going back and forth and talking about training, and he was like, not for nothing, the school's open, you should come in. And I was like, holy shit. He was like, I'll be teaching Saturday. And so my wife and my friend and I just like, we're like, okay, here we go. And, you know, I heard all these stories and everything, but I was like, we're like in it now. And yeah, I've been there basically every day since then. And now I'm like, you know, hanging out with Gary Tonin and a lot of these people. And I'm just like, this is crazy. This is so cool. And it was the same feeling. So I did the same thing as you when I was in, my show was on, it was actually on talkradio.nyc for the first 2.5 years.
Cool.
This is actually only my second show off of it. But I was interviewed on a real estate show about the neighborhood that I live in now.
Which one?
Windsor Terrace is
which
yeah, the neighborhood is called Windsor Terrace, like right next to Park Slope. So like, you know, pricey, like 12-foot wide, you know, row homes are going for over $1 million right now. It's insane.
Yeah.
And we've been here for a long time. I've seen those prices, you know, more than double in the time we're here. And like, back then we were like, we're never going to be able to buy. Now we're like, yeah, we're definitely never going to buy here. But, anyways, I was a guest on this show about our neighborhood. And at the end of the show, the executive producer was like, do you want your own show? And I just never even like thought about it. And I was like, sounds like fun. And I wrote down, you know, a list. I think mine was like 50 people. And yeah, same thing. I just started like going through, and, you know, most of them came on, and it works. It actually works. It's like,
that is cool.
You know, I really hope anybody listening to this that's interested in starting a podcast gets like at least a couple like just good bits like that about starting. It's like, you just do it, make a list, start calling people. That's it. Worst thing that happens is they say no, and you're not in any worse position you were than yesterday.
My first podcast was with my second podcast, because my first was alone, was with my best friend who doesn't do jiu-jitsu. But I'm very comfortable talking to him. You know, I love him. I invited him to do it, and he said yes. And we just had a conversation, and it got me used to speaking into a microphone and just the process of getting over that fear. And there's nothing wrong with that. And, you know, my first business, which was a big failure, called tonercentral.com. My first customer was my godmother. I had that invoice framed on my wall. I still have it somewhere here in the office. Mixology.com. My first sale was to Chris Lee, who was one of my colleagues at work and was a man, and we don't sell men's clothing. He was my first. It's like, so these people that help you get over the fear of just doing things is a really special moment to just say, the thing that's holding you back is your own time, and just do it. Just go and do it. And I think you'll surprise yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. I did my first 20 shows were just friends of mine. And fortunately, I'm in New York City, everybody around here is a star, it's they have these crazy companies and great stories. And it was the same, just getting comfortable. We used to do everything in studio. We had a studio right off of, 38, well, right on 38th Street off of 8th Ave, right near Madison Square Garden. And everybody used to come in, and it was very nice. It was intimate. It was a cool place. And then everything shut down and we went virtual. And then I was like, all right, now I really have to start asking people and just going for it. And it's it's like what you were talking about, getting over that fear stuff. It's like jujitsu, right? You get in there, you start training. It's so uncomfortable at first. You're so awkward. Everything feels weird. It's like guys climbing on top of you and getting in between your legs. And they become your best friends in life, right? It's you're connected in a way you're not connected with other humans after that. But I feel like podcasting is very similar.
Sure.
When you do a show with somebody, I think you get a similar connection to them.
Yeah, well, it's very tribal.
It's
a tribal thing, having a conversation with somebody and getting to know them and learning about them. I think it's a very important part of our society. And that was stripped away last year, during COVID, or 2 years ago. It was, locked in our homes, and you can't go out, you can't go to bars, you can't talk to people, social distance. And so it became a more important platform. And we've watched how important it's become with, the rise of Joe Rogan and the rise of all these, super podcasters. And I think it's an important medium. And whether you have a small podcast or a big podcast, or you write a book. When I wrote my first book, I didn't write it for commercial success. I never thought it was going to be that. I didn't even have a marketing plan to make it a commercial success. But I said, if just one person reads this book that it touches, it's going to be a success for me. It turned out, hundreds of people read the book, not maybe low thousands, but I got a really important business relationship off of it because I don't want to go into the whole story, but I was starting a software business, and the guy that I needed, he saw that the link was in my bio and we had been chatting, and he bought a copy of my book and he read it in one weekend, and he called me and he's like, I want to do business with you. I read your book. I know what you're about. I knew it when I talked to you, and then I read your book, and he's like, I know everything I need to know about you. And so that was a really important moment. And if you do 50, 100, 200 podcasts and you put them out there for people, you can't lie on who you are. If someone wants to know you, go watch 30, 40 minutes of that person. They're an asshole, they're cocky. You're going to find out everything about that person. And so if you want to do business with them, I think it's a really good way to kind of put yourself out there and say, this is who I am. This is what I do. And if you want to learn more about me, here's a body of work that I've done. And you can learn about how I feel about principles, how I feel about jiu-jitsu, how I feel about, and it's good. By the way, we were talking about Travis Stevens. When he was on my podcast, he really shook my world, because that guy is a very intense human. And he's an Olympic medalist. He's at the top of his field. He's a jiu-jitsu black belt. He's a judo black belt. John Danaher said he was one of the most complete athletes he had ever seen.
No, I just watched that interview again the other day, because I was like, I was going to talk about that when I went on show. Yeah.
And he said something to me, which really kind of, when people say something to you, they shake you, and I'm never going to forget that. And he said, I don't even know someone in my life who would be foolish enough to call me to go out on a Friday, because they know I'm getting up to train the next day. And I was like, can you, that's what someone at their tippy top of their field who wants excellence, and people who I coach and talk to, whether it's employees or friends or teammates, and I'm trying to explain to them the mentality that you need to be successful. And by the way, I'm not a billionaire at the top of my field, Olympic level, but I try to work as hard as I can. But admittedly, like you said, I have friends, I've partied, I like to go out, I go on vacations. But if you want to know what the best of the best are doing, they're home early, they're eating right, and their whole entire circle of friends is supporting them on their vision for whatever, whether it's a medal or whether it's insane success in business. So yeah, I think he's an important person to talk to.
He does enjoy McDonald's though. That was discovered.
Well, he's done with his career. So
yeah,
his Olympic career.
We were talking about diet after that seminar, and he was just like, "Oh yeah, I eat like shit all the time." So have you, when you started, or has it come up since starting your show? Have you thought about monetization of the show at all? I mean, you got it, not for nothing. You got a great following. Like you've been at it half as long as I have, and you got exponentially more YouTube subscribers. Your Instagram account is popping. I'm like, damn. Has that been a factor in it, or are you just it's really just to like help? I mean, I guess usually for the book is a way of monetization in itself.
Yeah, even writing the book, my primary motivation is not monetization. Of course, I've thought about it because I love business, right?
Right. Can't help it.
But I'm also a very patient businessman, and I'm also very patient in jiu-jitsu. And I don't want to tax this thing and make it about selling. Like I just put an order with Fuji, which is Travis's Jimmy Pedro and his daughter Casey Pedro. I just put an order with them for some gis and rash guards and shorts and stuff. It's mostly to give away as merch, but I'm gonna put a shop up there. But I don't expect to make any money off of it. I'm also not trying to live off of this, right. So I would, if I was advising someone who was trying to live off this and, burn the boats and say, this is it, I'm going all in, I would have a lot to say. And I do have a monetization plan because that's just who I am. I can't not have that. The easiest one is coaching. The most people that have reached out to me on the podcast, whether it's been podcast guests or frequent listeners, is, hey, can we talk? Can we do coaching? Can I have advice? Do you do that kind of thing? And up until this point, I've just said, I can't give you my full coaching attention, but if you want to talk, I'm happily work through business situations with you, especially around, they have a tough landlord, building out thing, like that kind of stuff is all in my wheelhouse. So I've helped them. I may do that. And I came up with a coaching / seminar program, except then what I ended up doing was I actually ended up rolling it out for my clothing company instead. So I built this whole program. And then last summer I did an 8-week. So basically the whole game plan I came up with for Business Jiu Jitsu, I ended up doing it at my clothing company. Because one of my principles for my first book was sometimes you need to pivot back to what you were originally doing. And I feel like all of my energy should be in my core businesses for making money. So last summer I did an 8-week leadership development program, and I had 140 students. And so that was my inaugural class. And so that it was very much, I kind of justified the fact that like, okay, I came up with this great plan. I know that I could do coaching. I know that I can sell product, but I said, let me do it for my core business. I may roll it out for Business Jiu Jitsu, but at this point, my 100% of my energy is into writing that book.
Yeah. I started something similar. It's funny for me. My show was not about martial arts at first. It's about entrepreneurship. And as I started to meet more and more martial artists and black belts in particular, I mean, it's no coincidence that a lot of martial artists are also savvy business owners. Like it just, so much creativity in both of them, dynamic problem solving, all those great things. And so more and more, and guys that I trained with, especially, even at the first school we were at, so many of them, they had their own hustle or their own business, and it just like started to permeate and take over. And at this point, that's largely what it's about. It's like odd if I have somebody that's not a martial artist on, they're just like a badass at business. But now that I'm at Henzo's, there's just like this endless well of those kind of people. And I'm just going to take my time and go through them all, it's really fascinating. And for me, there's the opening of a school on the table with some people that I train with, and I feel like the show is a great way to market that and make that a big success out of the gate. Not like, oh, we started with just like a few students and had to build it up. I think it's a great way to
like an academy, like a jiu-jitsu academy.
Yeah, like martial arts and fitness, not just jiu-jitsu, but I'm also a striker. Got a little black eye. I've been taking MMA classes at Henzo's lately, and that's god awful. It's great, but I'm getting my ass beat by a bunch of 20-year-old pro fighters. 2 of them have fights this weekend, and I spar with these guys, and I just feel like a man. I mean, it's like there's no, if you haven't done that yet, I suggest like trying it, like just go to like a cool MMA class, not like they're beating the living piss out of each other, but it will really lift the veil off of your eyes if you had any kind of like blind spots about your jiu-jitsu or your ability to fight. Everything gets exposed then, and you're like, oh my God, and for some people it's good. Some people walk in there and they just dominate and they're like, I am a badass. That was not the case for me. I came in and I was like, this is terrible. We have to fix this. Even after like whatever, almost 7 years of training, I'm like, oh,
it's looking for the holes in all of your games, business or otherwise, is an important part of self-discovery. That was my I'm the asshole moment. It's like,
right.
You're being the asshole. That's the exact same thing. It's just constantly seeking out where you are deficient and seeing, can I make it better? Or can I find a good, my sister, for example, a good counterpart to fill my hole. And that's a really, like you just nailed it. That's one of the business principles that jiu-jitsu is so good at,
And my buddy calls jiu-jitsu school is the mats of justice, because you can't hide, you can't lie, and like you said, it's similar when you're doing a show. But I feel like the people that really make it in business, whatever that means to you, are people that also can swallow their pride and meet their ego and just do something impressive with it. I think those are the people that really like retain those people that help you give 1,000%, because otherwise, I mean, the restaurant industry is brutal in terms of turnover. I'm sure retail, it's really hard to maintain that if you just continue to be the asshole.
Yeah, well, one of the things that I often say about jiu-jitsu people is, generally speaking, you don't find too many asshole black belts, right? Because how are you going to make it to black belt if you got the ego, if you're an asshole? And people also, I know plenty of asshole black belts. I'm like, yeah, but they're only black belts in jiu-jitsu because that was their natural gift. How about the black belt that can be a black belt in everything that they do? They can transfer their skills. They could take their learnings. They could jump into this or that. They could drop them in any situation. You drop Henzo Gracie, any situation, business, politics, school, put him in New York City, the grinder, put him in Japan. That guy rises to the top. He's going to be hugging everybody, schmoozing everybody. He's elite at everything he does. Yeah. He knows how to take his jiu-jitsu into every part. The guys that are black belts, amazing at jiu-jitsu, and are assholes, they usually had some kind of gift. It wasn't like they were just so good at jiu-jitsu. They just had an athletic gift and they got good, but they are not good at anything else. They are, I know those guys and I see how they act, and it's divorce, it's crime, it's all kinds of things that follow them. It's their business has failed 3 times. They stole money from investors. So it goes beyond just being, a black belt. It's just more about what you said. It's the philosophy of, can I use these skills, whether they're business skills going into jiu-jitsu or jiu-jitsu skills going into business or running or anything else, and do something amazing with my life. That's what I'm interested. That's what my book is about. My book is about decision-making. How do you know you're making the right decision? You're doing all this stuff. Sometimes you make a decision and you bake the cake and you don't find out if it was a good decision or a bad decision for 5 years or 10 years. And that is a hard thing, especially for young people. You don't know that you're making a good decision or a bad decision. And that's why, like, at my dojo, we have these principles. honesty, justice, polite courtesy, courage, compassion, sincerity, duty, loyalty, honor. It's like, as long as everything you do is through the lens of that, even if you're a white belt or a black belt, you're good.
Right.
And that's what I tell people in my business too. I was like,
I was going to say, do you use those in your business also?
We have our own,
Right.
Core values at my business. And I say, as long as you do everything through those core values, you don't have to ask me about every decision. Just as long as it's honorable and ethical, and you're doing things the right way, and you're not cutting corners, you're not doing anything illegal, immoral, we're good.
I got to hook you up with two of my friends. The one guy I was saying who franchised Tony D, and then this guy Lance Knob, who's he's got a bunch of physical therapy clinics in New Jersey, but he started a consulting business. And this is what they do. Their bread and butter is just like Tony's all about the 3 pillars, and he's the same way. He's got over 450 employees now in like 13 locations, and he's like, as long as like every question can be answered through the 3 pillars.
Yeah.
And from there, you need to ask less permission, from your superiors. Like, just the answers are all through there. And it engages the employees in a different way. And I think it's a big factor in his success. I want to wrap up with just a little bit more about your book. And I want you to give a nice plug for that, because that's something up and coming. But I want to throw a couple stats out at you and just get your, kind of get your feedback on it. So my buddy Lance, he's got this group, like a Facebook group called the 4 Percenters. And it's based off the statistic that only, that 96% of businesses fail in their first 10 years. Only 4% of small businesses, I should say, only 4% of small businesses make it past 10 years. Like, that's staggering. And I think less than 1% of people that start jiu-jitsu make it to black belt. So there's a correlation there between, the people that survive in both. And I think it has a lot to do with the fighter spirit. On hearing those, what's your initial thoughts about that?
I mean, I'm very familiar with the statistics around the business. That's a commonly uttered quote. And I hadn't heard the 1%. I don't know if we can quantify that in any. I don't know if that's more hyperbole or if that's actual statistic.
Well, Henner did a video on it, so it must be.
Did, okay. So as far as the jiu-jitsu goes, I think we'll find out if that's right. It sounds probable. In business, I know that those are real statistics. That is actually true. Business is very hard. What I tell everybody is, just, you have to try anyway. That's the whole spirit of our country, of what America means, is to fight those odds. If you think about all of our ancestors that came here, I'm of Jewish heritage. What my ancestors had to flee in Europe, or even further back in Israel, pogroms in Russia, everywhere they've gone, it's been severe adversity. So if I look back at my family tree over the past 150 years, do I have any right to say that I can't make it in this free democracy where the problems of the day are around woke? I don't even want to go down wokeism, but what's going to stop me from being successful? Those are my odds. I don't have to get on a sailboat and get here. I don't have to beat a potato famine. I don't have to escape a concentration camp. All I have to do is sell women's clothes and be successful and do some jiu-jitsu at night. So if you frame it through that, it changes it. And every single one of the things I really take issue with around, and I don't mind putting this out there, I just, through the essence of what they call white privilege, right? What's a white person? Is that a white Italian person? Is that a white Russian? Is that a white person from the Middle East? Is that a white, like, what is white, right? The white experience of the Irish person is very, in Boston, is very different than the experience of a white person in Minnesota from German heritage. And so what I do love about the shared experience of all people, black, white, Hispanic, every single race, is the fact that we got here to this country. We all got here in some way, and we have a set of laws and customs and values that make the as level as it possibly could be. Is it level for everybody? No. Some people are born rich, some people are, but if you're born in this country and you speak English and you are a citizen, then you have a massive leg up over everybody else around the world. And I understand it's not an even playing field. I'm not trying to say that. And by the way, I'm not even trying to say white privilege doesn't exist. I think it does exist. That's one of the, if there's a privilege, everybody has something. But entrepreneurship says, I'm not black, I'm not white, I'm not Jewish, I'm not Catholic, I'm an entrepreneur. And it's the same thing in jiu-jitsu. You walk into a jiu-jitsu class. It doesn't matter what your circumstances were, where you came from. You could have been a college D1 athlete. You could have been a wrestler, a judo guy. When you get on that mat, no, now you're a jiu-jitsu player. It doesn't matter. All those things are out the window. And so that's what entrepreneurship and business so have in common. And when I do have teammates that come in, and I have a bunch of African-American teammates, they sit in front of me and they say, it's hard to be a black guy and start a business. I said, you're right. It is hard to be a black guy and start a business, except that's not the reason that you're not successful. You have to go and kill it and just do anything possible to be successful. That's it. That's the only answer. And then like, well, what do I do? Show up again tomorrow. That's it. Don't give up. If you keep showing up, if you never give up, then you're going to win. And that's what an entrepreneur is. And so it's once you decide to be an entrepreneur and start businesses, you have to just drop every limiting belief that you have from your old life. And same thing with jiu-jitsu. When you walk into that gym, everything that you think you know, you don't know, except for I'm going to come back tomorrow and learn some more. That's it.
Boom. Mic drop moment, man. That was fantastic. Do you have enough? Do you have more left in you to talk about the book after that?
Yeah, listen, the book isn't done yet, so there's nothing to buy. But if you want to follow along on the journey, it's Business Jiu Jitsu on Instagram.
Do you have a title yet?
Business Jiu Jitsu.
That's what it's, man, you're going to kill it with that. Jesus Christ, the search for that. Like, just searching like a Google search, you're going to destroy those keywords. That's amazing. I hope so. Yeah. That's great.
Yeah. It's something I'm really passionate about. And I hope that it can help people understand that there's overwhelming odds against you. And you are, like you said, 96%, you're probably going to fail. Yeah. But you should still do it anyway.
Yep. They say in MMA, the number one rule is don't lose.
Yeah.
Because you can't win if you've lost.
Yeah, that's right.
Like everybody, Jimmy Crowder's like the head MMA coach now at Hentos. And he's like, everybody wants to win. Nobody's focusing on not losing. He's like, so you gotta, like, that's the first thing. Like if you go out there and you're like, I want to knock this motherfucker out, you approach that, you can get knocked out yourself. And then you can't win. Yeah. You can't win that way. You become the statistic. So that's really fantastic advice. When is I think you said it earlier. I
think sometime around early 2023. I've got all the meat of the book is done, like the chapters, the subjects, the narrative. And now I've been writing it. I have a great team that helps me write it because I'm not an author. Right. Company's called Scribe Media, if anybody's interested in writing books and needs help. And, we meet once a week and we bang out a chapter and we just keep polishing it and polishing it. This is going to be my third book with this company because my dad wrote a book before, but I was very active in publishing it with him.
Okay.
And, I think probably by early next year.
That's great. I look forward to it. And released all the usual channels for books, Amazon and
Amazon.
Amazon.
That's cool, we'll hook up again when it comes out.
Yeah, man, it's super exciting. And I just want to say thanks again for coming on, taking the time out, and just sharing your perspective and all those great little bits of advice. It's all that added value, baby. It's great stuff.
Well, anytime, if I could be of service to you, you let me know. If you want to come on and talk about your show on my podcast, I'd love to have you. And thank you so much. It's been great talking to you and getting to know you. Hope we get to do some training sometime.
Yeah, well, you're not too far. You ever come to Midtown?
Yeah, I mean, not so much since COVID, but before that.
But you trained in the blue basement.
Yep, many times. I used to. The last time I went was for my birthday in June of 19, and I haven't been back since COVID. But tried to get down there as much as possible. I mean, I lived very close in 44th and 2nd for 12 years, but I worked out on Long Island, so I train out here.
Yeah, man. If you ever if you know you're coming in, drop me a message and let me know you're going to be there. I'm usually there during the daytimes right now because the restaurant. restaurant is requiring a lot of my attention at nighttime. Staffing shortage and all that stuff, but
yeah,
still in the fight. So
keep it going. All
cool,
right,
man.
great meeting you. Thank you so much.
You too. All right, everybody. Have a great week. We'll see you soon.
Have a good one.